Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you very much to Barbara and CIWEM and Tyne Humber as well for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's great to be speaking to you all, and thank you for you all for coming today. It's great that there's 96 of you, it seems. I was a bit nervous. I was thinking, would there be lots of people? Would there be little? And I couldn't decide what I'd be more nervous about. So this seems like a really great number. So thank you very much for all dialing in. So today, my plan for this session is to give a bit of an introduction and then talk a little bit about Young Environmentalist of the Year. I'm then going to talk about what I'm doing beyond the 9 to 5 as an environmentalist and how this links in with the work that I have been doing around delivering social outcomes and working with nature at Mott MacDonald, and feeding into this, giving a bit of a sneak peek of the upcoming Syria Natural Flood Management Manual, and then talking a little bit more about what's next following on from winning Young Environmentalist of the Year. So as a bit of an introduction, here I am in a classic catalogue pose that I take up in pretty much every outdoorsy photo opportunity. So I started my career journey at Mott MacDonald in 2019. I've been there from 2019 to the present. I started in 2019 as an intern and then joined in September 2020 as a graduate flood risk consultant. And I specialise in nature-based solutions for water, and I've worked on various natural flood management projects, including the Leeds Flood Alleviation Scheme Natural Flood Management Project and the Syria Natural Flood Management Manual, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about later, and a couple of catchment management projects too. Since March 2021, I've been the Water Resources and Flooding Global Practice Early Careers Lead for Mott MacDonald. And then since November 2021, I've been the Social Outcomes Early Careers Lead for the Water and Environment Unit at Mott MacDonald, which I'll go into a little bit more about later. But I always like to say that my career journey really began in the water and environment sector when I walked through the doors of the University of Leeds way back now in 2017. And I studied a physical geography degree specialising in water, climate and geomorphology. And I really like to show this slide because my dissertation focused on the geomorphological impact of natural flood management leaky barriers in an upland catchment in the Yorkshire Dales. And I used time-lapse imagery in a 360 array using some time-lapse cameras coupled with a structure for motion workflow, which is essentially turning images into 3D models in order to carry out my research around some leaky barriers in Coverdale in the Yorkshire Dales. And as well as producing many things as part of this research, including my dissertation and lots of models and data, my research also produced this Oscar-winning time-lapse footage on the screen here, which shows me and my trusty field helper dad on one of our many trips to Coverdale. And on this particular trip, I had just acquired some new time-lapse cameras, and we were deciding where would be the best place to put them. So this video actually time-lapses through the whole day of fieldwork, but I'm not going to make you sit through all of that. We've only got an hour to watch, so we're not going to be watching this whole arty short film, but I think it's a really great way to show research in action. So in January 2022, I was honoured to be announced as CIWEM's Young Environmentalist of the Year. I submitted my application in December 2021, and the questions that were in the application were all around my experience in the water and environment sector, the work that I had carried out outside of kind of a normal work remit, contributing to environmental awareness, and then how I align with CIWEM's vision for creating a safer, more sustainable world. So I was really honoured to be asked for an interview in January 2022, and it's safe to say I was a little bit nervous looking at the prestige of the interview panel. So there was Ariane Brotto, who's a previous winner. There was the CIWEM Director of Operations, Richard Bliss. There was Richard Ashby Crane, the Jacobs Executive Director of Operations, and the WRT Co-Creation Specialist and CIWEM Honorary Fellow, Sarah Ward. But it was a really fantastic experience in just being in the room and talking to these people and having these really fantastic conversations, which is something that was really a great honour. And some of those topics that we covered, I will cover today as well. So as part of my award, I was given a 3-year CIWEM membership bursary, which is really going to boost me going into trying to get chartered in the next couple of years. And then also I received a Flood and Coast conference ticket for 2022. So I'll be in Telford in June, which will be really great experience and opportunity to meet up with some of the people who I've worked with over the past 2 years in person as well. So here I am with my award in this photo on the right. And while it's very professional, it doesn't really summarise who I am as an environmentalist. So I'm going to switch to these 2 photos instead. So I'm a keen hiker and explorer of the outdoors. And these 2 photos were taken in 2 very different weather conditions last summer. On the left here, we've got the Yorkshire Dales, beautiful in the summer sun. And then on the right, we've got a very, very cloudy climb up Striding Edge, Helvellyn, in the Lake District in late summer last year. And I think what these photos really show is my enthusiasm and passion for that outdoors and for valuing, protecting and restoring the environment, as the title of this webinar suggests, and how this goes far beyond my workplace life. So my plan for this presentation is really to take you on a similar journey to I did in my CIWEM Young Environmentalist interview in January this year, and take you on the journey of how I became more environmentally aware and conscious, and how my journey is really inspired by valuing, protecting and restoring the environment, and how that's really at the heart of this. So let's start with some of the changes that I've made to really value and restore and protect that environment beyond the 9 to 5. So I wanted to really start off this section by showing that maybe I wasn't a born environmentalist, and that these changes to living more environmentally sustainably haven't happened overnight, and it's taken time, and I'm really proud of the changes that I've made, and it's never too late to start making these changes either. So I'm going to go through a couple of them with you now. So the first one, I hold my hands up. I drank a lot of bottled water in my first year of uni, not too sure why. But thankfully, I have changed that behaviour, and I now take this water bottle with me on the right wherever I go instead. Similarly, I was a big fan of a cheese board and a bacon sandwich because they're great. But since 2021, I made the choice to live as part of Veganuary and then onwards to live a mainly plant-based life, which has been a really fantastic change, and I've loved doing it. It's been so interesting to find out all the different new foods to cook as well. It's been a bit of a journey. Some food offerings haven't been as good as others that I prepared, but it's been really fantastic to do. And then another thing that I've changed is I used to take a slightly crazy amount of Ubers and taxis. Some of that was for safety, which is completely acceptable. Others of it was because I was a little bit lazy. But now I don these rather fabulous leopard print trainers as I walk around Leeds instead, which has made a real sort of change to my carbon footprint as well. And then thinking about more kind of everyday choices that I've made. So I decided instead that I was going to look into using more reusable products. And one of these was reusable makeup removal pads instead of using disposable ones, which is a very sort of quite simple, you might say, everyday choice to make, but it's really made a difference to the amount of single-use items that I'm consuming. And what I've put at the bottom really still rings true. These changes didn't happen overnight, and it took a few years, and there are still lots of other changes that I'd like to implement, both big and small in my life. But what I think this shows is that it's not about making these changes all at once. It's about recognizing that we do want to value our environment, and it's about making those gradual small changes as and where we can, and where budgets and time allows us to be able to do so. So a couple of other things that I've been involved in outside of the 9 to 5. I think a key part of being an environmentalist is about collaborating with and learning from and sharing understanding with others. And as part of this, I've delivered talks as part of the Water Aid Speaker Network. And for me, that's not just about talking to brownies and guides and cubs and beaver groups. It's also about learning from them as well and hearing their ideas and what they have to say, because they're the future generations of climate champions. They're the people we should be listening to for ideas. And it's always so fantastic to see how engaged they are and how raring to go they are with ideas. If you get them to do star jumps to sort of answer a question or get their hands up, they do it. They're really engaged and enthusiastic about it. And it's really great to hear their ideas. And linked to this, leading up to World Water Day, I challenged myself to do a variety of water word-based runs around Leeds city centre that was inspired by the WaterAid #TAP challenge. One of the words that I attempted to spell was tap to raise awareness for World Water Day. Tap was the best word that I did. Some of my attempts were not so successful on other words, so I decided to go with tap on the slides today. Some of them were definitely not as successful as spelling out that using the streets of Leeds. Another thing that I've been involved with is the CIWEM Early Careers Steering Group. And this has been a really, really great opportunity. And I'd encourage anybody at the starts of their careers, or even if they're sort of further on in their careers, to get involved with these kinds of groups. It's a really great way to learn from others and work with others too, all across the sector. And it brings really great opportunities for networking and learning. And as part of this, a group of us from that steering group and other colleagues as well, we were delighted to be part of a early careers session at Flood and Coast in 2021, talking about the priorities from the perspective of early career professionals for COP26. And our speeches contributed to an open letter to Alok Sharma as well. So it was a really great way to all work together on something and have that collective voice as early career professionals. So things that are happening for Flood and Coast in 2022, they're still sort of TBC at the moment. There are some exciting things coming up that I'm hoping to be able to share and promote soon as well. It looks like it's going to be a fantastic programme. So I'd encourage you all to get your ticket if you can. So thinking back to the kinds of things that I spoke about in my Young Environmentalist interview, and one of these was around my work at Mott MacDonald around delivering social outcomes, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. As I've mentioned just previously, I'm the Social Outcomes Early Careers Lead for the Water and Environment Unit in Mott MacDonald Europe. And it's quite a long title, so what does that actually mean? So in this role, I help to champion embedding social outcomes into our client projects and into our internal initiatives, and really upskilling ECPs, so early career professionals and others, around social outcomes as well. But then comes the next question, well, what actually do we mean by social outcomes? So at Mott MacDonald, we describe it really simply. It's around improving society and leaving that positive legacy, or making a difference in the communities that we work in. And as I put here, it's not just words, it's a commitment that I really stand by and I'm really passionate about making those positive changes in people's lives. And that's really instilled in our purpose as well as a company. So about improving society by considering social outcomes in everything we do. And I've highlighted here the bit that's really important to me, and that's about transforming our communities. And this whole idea of delivering social outcomes, that's really underpinned and supported by our social outcomes framework. So essentially, it's a core set of principles to guide us on how we design and deliver projects that leave that positive legacy. And it's split into 5 key pillars that you can see here. So we've got accessibility, inclusion, empowerment, resilience, and well-being. And the one that I really want to focus on is the resilience pillar. Because if we zoom into that, we can see that one of those sort of items is climate resilient and sustainable communities. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, having worked on nature-based solutions and natural flood management projects, in particular so the Leeds Natural Flood Management Project and the Syria Natural Flood Management Manual, is all about delivering those climate resilience and sustainable communities and delivering those wider social outcomes as well. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. So as the name of this talk suggests, and as I've mentioned, I'm really passionate about these ideas around protecting the environment and valuing it and restoring it. And in particular, how we can implement those nature-based solutions and provide those wider societal benefits as well. So for those of you who may not be familiar with nature-based solutions, I would strongly recommend that you check out this really cool nature-based solutions interactive map that's just been launched. I think Barbara might pop the link in the chat to it as well. And it explores nature-based solutions in the wider sense and how they can work across all types of landscapes to solve lots of different types of issues. So the tool means that you can click on different options and look and learn more about what the approaches are and also what the co-benefits are, and learn about case studies as well. It's a really great gateway tool into learning so much more about nature-based solutions and what can be achieved. So we know that lots of different nature-based solutions can provide flood risk benefits, and that natural flood management is a solution focusing on flood resilience as the primary benefit. And that's what I'm going to focus on in a little bit more detail now. So during my interview for Young Environmentalist on the Year, after taking people on my sort of environmentalist personal journey through from my bacon sandwiches to my leopard print trainers and beyond, I then introduced a bit more about my professional experience. And central to that, and something I'm really proud to have worked on, is the Syria Natural Flood Management Manual, because it really takes into account those ideas of how we can value and protect and restore the environment. We've worked with such an awesome team, including the River Restoration Centre, the Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust, and ICASP, and a fantastic steering group on this project. And it's something I've been really honoured and proud to be part of. As somebody right at the start of their career, it was one of the first projects that I started working on at Mott MacDonald, and it's given me such an insight into working with so many fantastic organisations and project partners, and being involved right from the start as well. And it was great to be involved in that engagement process as well, actually being able to have those conversations with practitioners about their own projects, which has in turn informed the manual as well, which has been fantastic to see. So a little bit about the manual. So the Syria Natural Flood Management Manual is conceived as a tool to help people undertake natural flood management in their local river environment. And it brings together all previous understanding and techniques into one standalone manual. And it's aiming to be a tool to unlock NFM and make it a process by which we move from the learning about NFM into actually doing it and at scale and being confident in the outcomes that we can achieve. So the primary audience for the manual is people implementing NFM in their local river catchments. So this may be individuals or groups of landowners or managers, or a community group or an environmental NGO such as the Rivers Trust or the Wildlife Trust. And it can be used by a full range of authorities as well, and organisations and professionals that are working on NFM projects. So you may be asking, well, what is natural flood management? So it puts it quite simply here. So it's used across the landscape to protect, restore, and mimic the natural functions of catchments and floodplains and rivers and coasts. And it forms just one potential approach to reduce the risk of flooding. And it should be considered alongside a range of other options to reduce both the likelihood of flooding and then the impacts as well. So it's definitely not a golden bullet that's going to solve all our flood risk challenges, because flooding is a natural hydrological process, and we have significantly modified our floodplains and our landscapes by building communities in places that are prone to flooding. And we've also got climate change to contend with as well. However, we need to be learning to live with that risk, and nature-based solutions, and in this case natural flood management, need to be more central in that environmental toolkit that was going to help us reduce flood risk whilst also delivering all of those wider fantastic environmental and social benefits too. So this wonderful diagram is one that is included right at the start of the manual, and the diagram introduces 11 inland NFM natural flood management measures, and indicates that some of these are also subdivided into smaller kind of measure types that we have called measure types. And there is considerable overlap between some of the measures. So this is because they can be used in different ways in different places across the landscape. So for example, leaky barriers, which are sort of woody debris placed sort of perhaps across the watercourse, could be placed across the watercourse to manage stream or river flows, but they could also be used to manage overland flow on land. as well. And similarly, bunds can be used to interrupt flow pathways and store runoff as well. So it's important to consider a range of measures, which I think what this diagram shows really effectively in lots of different locations to reduce flood risk, instead of considering a single solution on or a particular location. And it's all about really taking that holistic and catchment scale approach and thinking about it as a system as well. So what are the aims of the manual? There are three key aims. So the first is to move natural flood management into the delivery phase and provide guidance on how and where to deliver natural flood management. So it was largely considered that the why use NFM kind of piece has been covered, and what we needed next is some practical guidance. The second aim is to provide confidence in natural flood management by bringing our collective understanding all into one place and providing a manual that is simple to use and very widely applicable. And finally, the third aim is to maximise outcomes. So to ensure that the best outcomes are delivered, and by giving more certainty, which means therefore over time, we'll be getting more credibility for NFM as a solution. And we need to remember that the manual, as exciting as it is that it's coming out now, is really a snapshot in time, and that things are going to be evolving. So moving on from things evolving to who is involved, the great thing about this manual is that it provides so many perspectives on natural flood management. So it brings together the previous information and guidance that has been produced into one single document. And we did an extensive literature review, an engagement exercise to understand what content was available to go into the manual. And this means that the new manual has brought together pre-existing research into a single location, refining and developing those recommendations along the way. So the entire process was overseen by an expert, fantastic steering group of 28 people, bringing in a range of technical disciplines and industry perspectives. And this included flood risk, drainage, environmental authorities, asset owners and operators such as road, rail and water authorities, local authorities, consultants, contractors, universities, environmental NGOs, so people like the Rivers Trust and the National Trust and the NFU. And the project team was really diverse too. We got lots of different voices in there. So we had the academic angle from ICASP, and that's a project centred on catchment management hosted by the University of Leeds. We had the on-the-ground perspective from the Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust. We had technical advice from the River Restoration Centre, the RRC. And we had the consultant view from ourselves at Mott MacDonald. And we also, as well as that, we had lots and lots of input from a range of people who have implemented natural flood management and provided information to help to assist with this, whether that be workshops or case studies or interview input. It's been so fantastic to hear from all of these different practitioners about their experiences, what went well, what didn't go so well, what were their lessons learned. And that's what's really gone into the manual as well, and has been so crucial in its development. So we'd really like to say thank you as well to everybody who has been involved and has helped with that along the way. So now finally, a little sneak peek at the manual structure as well. So the manual is set out to mirror the SIRIA SUDS manual, so the Sustainable Drainage Systems manual, and is divided into 4 sections plus those all-important appendices at the end, and is colour-coded based on those sections. So it starts with a high-level overview and progresses to more detailed guidance. So we start off with part A, which is an introduction to NFM and to the manual to get people excited about doing natural flood management work. The second section, part B, is the philosophy and approach. So general principles, where to start, how to choose NFM sites and measures, the key things you're going to need at the start of your project. Part C is about the NFM measures, so going into more detailed information on a range of inland NFM measures, which we saw on that diagram at the start. And then part D, how to actually deliver them. So detailed information on the delivery of EdFM with process steps and overarching considerations that will need to go into your planning of a project. And finally, last but not least, those all important appendices. So really, really fantastic, interesting case studies, further information, that really important glossary of key terms and references as well for further information. So this is a really exciting time for us. We've been working on this project as a team for over 2 years now, and it's great to see that lots of hard work and teamwork has really come to fruition here. I'm excited to say that the manual is launching on the 10th of May, 2022. So watch this space. I've given a very brief overview here. However, if you were looking for a bit more of a sneak peek, then please look at Emma Wren's environmental analyst presentation from back in January as well, where she goes into a little bit more detail. And also please keep an eye out for those exciting launch event details, because the launch isn't that far away now. So what's next? Thinking back to my interview process and the journey that I took them on in my interview for Young Environmentalist of the Year, I was beyond honoured to be announced as the winner of this award. But at the same time, I'm aware that it's also quite a big responsibility, because for me, it's not just about winning the award, it's about what you do once you've won it. And something that I'm particularly passionate about is about the accessibility of environmentalism and about how it can often be seen as a luxury, because even some of the suggestions of things that I've done in my own life on the slides today aren't accessible for everybody to be able to do, because lots of the changes that we see suggested in the media and in other outlets, they might seem like they're quick and easy changes, but they're not quick and easy changes for everybody. Everybody has different budgets, everybody has different time requirements, everyone has different resources. So I feel like more work needs to be done to make changes that are quick, cheap and easy for people to make, so that people are more likely to make those. And as well as that, we need to have engagement around being able to make those changes. And we need more resources to be available to be able to do that, both educational resources, whether that be in schools and communities, and then financial resources as well to be able to support people making those changes, and also with that engagement process as well. And this is something that I want to do a lot of work on throughout this year and beyond. So as you can probably tell, I'm very enthusiastic about those key things, about restoring, protecting and valuing our environment. And I'm really passionate about building a community of climate champions. And I've come up with a bit of an acronym. So what I think is really important about what we need to be doing next as a sector and beyond is about creating a community for living in ways that are environmentally aware in the now. I've gone with clean, I'm going to stick to it. So as I've shown in this presentation, it's never too late to start making changes, no matter how small you think they may be. So I've gone with clean, I'm sticking through it into my tick list of challenges almost about being more environmentally aware. What more things could you do? And it's what I use myself as well when I'm thinking about what I could do to live more sustainably. So the first one, letter C, champion. How we can be environmental champions and learn from others as well. And then the letter L, learn. So thinking about resources for learning, what could we share? What could we learn from other people as well? Because there's always opportunities for continuous learning. I don't know everything about the environmental crisis, but I'm always keen to learn more. And I think that's really important for us all to be able to move forward. And then engage. How can we find out about organisations to get involved with, initiatives and campaigns, and share those within our community and within our sector so we can all learn more together and learn from each other. And then act, making those changes to live more sustainably as well, no matter how small they may be, and making changes that are accessible for you, making changes that are at your budget, that are within your resources, changes that you can make. And then finally, nourish. So mindful lifestyle choices. So I've said we need more resources and we need more choices that we can make that are accessible and that don't make environmentalism seem as much like a luxury. So making mindful lifestyle choices, whether that be making sure that you recycle or maybe changing to, a plant-based diet, or maybe cutting out meat however many times a week, things like that that you could do to make those mindful choices throughout your day-to-day life. So that's my tick list that I use for myself, and I hope that you have found it useful in some way. So as a final thought, my final slide, I was interviewed for CIWEM's Environment magazine by Miriam, one of their journalists, last month. And thankfully, they sent the questions out to me in advance, so I had a bit of time to think about it. And one of the questions that really stuck with me and got me thinking was, so what does being an environmentalist mean to you? So I sat back and I had a bit of time to think about it, and it took me a few days to really come up with something that I thought really spoke to me and came from my own experiences. So for me, I said that being an environmentalist, as the name of this talk suggests, is about respecting and valuing the environment, and about focusing on the changes that we can make in our everyday lives, rather than the ones that we can't. So never belittle the choices and the changes that you are making, no matter how small they may seem. And then that everybody doing that little bit, those smaller choices that we might make in our day-to-day lives, is better than doing nothing at all. So again, never belittle those choices and changes that you make, and champion those in others as well. So I hope that my presentation has been interesting in some way, and I am very aware that many of you have taken time out of your lunch break to attend this talk, and for that I'm really grateful. So if you are popping to the shop perhaps after this talk, I hope that the past sort of 30 minutes or so have really sort of maybe inspired you to pick up perhaps a meat-free meal deal on your walk to the shop, because that's an awesome way on a journey and a step to living a more environmentally aware life. So maybe as well on that walk to pick up that meal deal, maybe take some time to also question what being an environmentalist means to you. So thank you very much for listening to me over the past 30 minutes. It's been really great to speak to you all today, and yes, I'd welcome any questions that you have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. That was great. Really interesting. Yeah, you've inspired me there to think about my environmental footprint and what I can do and changes I can make. So hopefully you've done that with another 100 people on the call as well. So there are a few questions in the Q&A here. So I'll just read them out to you, Megan, and hopefully you can go through that. So first one's from Joanne Bergin, and it says, what do you think about the beaver reintroductions? She won't be speaking because she's got a cold. Is it a bit?
Oh, I sympathise with you if you've got a cold. That's really awful. I think they're a really interesting idea, and any ways that we can try and, really try and restore natural environments are fantastic. Let's see how well they work, and it will really help to add to the evidence base as well. They're great ways to be able to have sort of lessons learned from these kinds of projects, and the more kinds of ideas that we can sort of build up in that evidence base, the better. So I think they're really interesting concepts.
Yeah, great. Another question from Joanne as well. Do you wear a mask while walking around Leeds as a response to the fumes from vehicles in the area?
That's a really interesting question. No, I don't wear a mask when I'm walking around Leeds. I tend to walk along the canal to work instead of walking along the main city centre kind of loop road stretch. So I walk down the canal instead. So there are less fumes from that. But it is a problem in city centres as well, that they are quite polluted environments. So I don't personally wear a mask, but I think we all need to be aware of the pollutions in city centres as well.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of clean air zones being introduced, aren't they, as well? Okay, question from Gregor here. Do you feel that our current appraisal approach to developing risk management constrains the development of larger multi-change perspective of natural flood management in a catchment management? First, in our focus on risk, and second, in narrowing down on short-term local issues. Should there be a requirement objective to deliver natural flood management more as a design rather than an appraisal process?
That's a very interesting question. I personally, I'm going to hold my hands up, haven't been part of the appraisal process, so I can't really answer that one particularly well. However, what I will say is that I think we need to be putting natural flood management and nature-based solutions at a sort of a more central part of our environmental toolkit, and considering more how we can implement those, maybe not even as sort of the central part of a project, but considering how we can incorporate them into projects as well. So thinking about them more as sort of a spanner in the toolkit that we can use to build up a project more effectively. But it's a very big question. I'd be happy to go away and have a think about it, but probably not right now.
Okay, all right, great. A couple more coming in here. Megan, okay. One from Ken Moss. So what initially changed your mind to become more environmentally friendly? Was it local or national issues or a combination? And how do your talks at the Brownies go down? Are the children interested to engage?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So I'd say initially, it was probably when I started at university. And I think it's that coming back to that piece around learning from others as well, because some people at university were far more environmentally aware than I was. I was drinking bottled water when I first got there, and I quickly changed that. So I think it's about learning from other people as well, and being around people that have those mindsets and can champion the environment and challenge your choices as well. And you learn from other people's behaviours too. So I was seeing lots of people in lecture theatres around, it was around the time when sort of reusable water bottles, sort of the tin ones, many brands are available, were becoming really sort of popular and widely used. And then that got me thinking, well, why am I not doing that as well? So I think learning from other people's behaviours, especially when I went to university, because I was studying a physical geography degree, that really helped to open my eyes. So both the people that I was being surrounded by and also the content when I was in lectures as well. So the combination of sort of traditional learning and the learning that I was getting from the other students as well and the people around me really helped. I'd say your second point around the Brownies and Beavers talks, they go down well, I'd say. I think it's about the way that you engage with them, because you'd engage with that age group differently to how you would engage perhaps with a group of adults. And it's about speaking to people on their level and in terms that they understand. And I get them to do lots of actions. So if we're talking about showering, we're going to be showering our heads. If we're talking about drinking, we're pretending to drink water, and getting people to do actions that way as well. That really engages them and gets them involved and wanting to participate too.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Megan. There's a couple of questions from Julie Rickow here. So first bit, thank you for your inspirational talk. Do you feel that your generation is as involved and passionate as you are, or do you feel a bit like an odd one out, like I do in my generation? Yeah.
Luckily, I don't feel like I am the odd one out. I feel like there's still a lot of work left to be done. And there's lots of people that we need to engage. And maybe sometimes we are in a little bit of a bubble, being in the sector that we are in, and being around people who also are so passionate about the environment and about the water sector. So maybe that sort of shelters us a bit from maybe people that aren't so engaged at times. However, I would say that I'm definitely not the odd one out. I'd say that kinds of the youth marches on climate in the past few years have shown the amount of people that are really passionate about these ideas around protecting and valuing and restoring the environment. So I wouldn't say that I'm the odd one out. I say there's still a lot of work around engagement left to be done, but thankfully I don't feel like it's just me.
Great, okay. Julie's second question is, what do you feel is the greatest obstacle for people to adopt more environmentally friendly habits?
I think there's a couple of things. I think the first one is around resources, which is something that I've touched on here, and about how I think environmentalism is sometimes seen as a luxury. And I think that's something we really need to work on. Firstly, not all options that are out there are cheap and easy for people to implement, because what might seem like a quick and cheap choice for some people definitely isn't for other people. So that then makes you question, well, what do we need to do? Do we need to engage people to make these choices? Or do we need to make it so that the choices that people can make are cheap and are accessible and are available? So I think it's a bit of both. I think it's around we need better engagement and education. And I think that starts both at a grassroots and a community level around climate engagement and valuing the environment. But I think we also need to have choices and resources and things on the market that we can do that are cheap and easy for everybody to access.
Yep, agree with that. Question from Louise Walker. Hi Megan, do you think the Syria approach to developing guidance is a good one? I think you answered in your presentation, but wondered if you could expand on what is good about the collaborative approach.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Louise. I think that's a really fantastic question. I think it really is a great way to be creating guidance. We've had so many people involved in it. It's that collaboration. It's that idea of working together, because working together and collaborating and learning from each other and getting all of those different experiences in is how we're going to build up a really great evidence base, getting different perspectives as well. We had a steering group of 28 fantastic people from lots of different organisations. We had technical perspectives, we had on the ground perspectives, we had research perspectives, and I think that's what makes the upcoming Syria manual in particular, from my experience, so valuable, is all the different perspectives that have come in and all the voices that have been listened to and heard, and not just our steering groups and our team of people working on it, but the people we've talked to during engagement as well, because their experiences are so valuable, because they've been practicing natural flood management on the ground, and we can learn about what went well, what didn't go well, what were their lessons learned, and what would they move forward with. Because natural flood management and designing these kinds of schemes is an iterative process. It's all about learning lessons and how we move forward with those and gain more experience. So I would say definitely, Louise, I think it's a great way to work. That collaborative process has been really fantastic to be part of.
That's great, thank you. Got a question, Brian Reed, I think he's just tagging on the end of Louise's question there. Do you think there were any groups that were hard to engage with? I suppose any of the stakeholders you were talking about there?
With our different groups? I don't think so. I think everybody we spoke to was really keen to be involved in it. I think it's because people are really wanting this kind of guidance. They're wanting this practical manual that they'll be able to use and they'll be able to take out to people and show them. And it's really engaging as well. I've seen the diagrams that have been drawn. I've seen the illustrations. It's really engaging, and I think it's what people want, is they want something that's engaging and easy to understand, and people want to be a part of that process. So from my experience, from everybody that I spoke to, people were really keen to be involved.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you, Megan. I think that looks like that might be the end of the questions that people are submitting there. So yeah, looks like that's the last question. So yeah, thank you very much, Megan, for giving us that presentation and responding to all those questions. It was really interesting and really inspirational. So thank you again from CIWEM, and well done on your winning the Young Environmentalist. So I'll leave it there, sign off. Have a lovely day, everybody, rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much.